Edition of the Dialogue. My name is Prince Apollo. It is time to look at the big events which made our week, and the panel is set to take you through those big events and a deep discussion on the big stories. Quite a busy week we've had, full of big events. The Labor Day celebrations were held in Fort Portal City, but also we had the World Press Freedom Day also celebrated, and we really stand to celebrate with all the workers in this country, the members of the Fourth Estate, and Ugandans at large. Of course, we also stand with our neighbors, the Kenyans and the Tanzanians, following those catastrophic climatic events going on in their countries. The recent reports indicate that more than 200 people have been confirmed dead in Kenya as floods and mudslides continue to ravage the East African countries. Well, perhaps it is a grim reminder that we should indeed protect our environment and at least do something every day to keep our environment intact. My name is Prince Apollo. In the studios, Comrade Daniel Rugarama is here, of course, and we've been joined by Simon Senyonga. And Simon is a lawyer, a social critic, but let me introduce Dr. Daniel Rugarama. I'm happy to have you on the big show this morning.
Good morning to you, our colleagues out there, and welcome to the dialogue. Thank you, Comrade Apollo, and my colleague Senyonga. Probably, if you allow me a minute,
please.
This week witnessed, of course, the labor celebrations, and we can go on celebrating Labor Day, but I think the critical question should be what has the respective governments across the continent, and Uganda in particular, done about our labor force. The living wage is not there. The working conditions of those who toil, both in government and the private sector, is deplorable. We have got a situation whereby even those who are earning cannot comfortably look after their families. We still have a lot of work to do as a country.
Sure.
In order to overcome what probably we should have overcome some years ago.
Sure.
The World Press Day. There is some meaningful levels of freedom of press, although it's not yet Uhuru. We can do better, and I think it is work in progress. Going forward, I hope things will be better, both in the labor force and also in the Fourth Estate. Thank you,
Doctor. I'm pleased to have you on the dialogue. Councillor Simon, welcome to the dialogue.
Thank you very much, Apollo, for hosting me, and good morning, viewers. It's always a pleasure to come back to a place I call home. My pleasure to meet Dr. Rugarama. I've followed his debates and discussions, and thank you very much for bringing us such a brilliant brain and force.
A staunch Pan-Africanist.
Yes, a very staunch Pan-Africanist, but also I think people who contribute relevantly to social discussion and debate. It's also obvious. I also extend my condolences to the people of Kenya for the catastrophe they have suffered. For me, most importantly, is that the hand of God is strong to save a nation, and that's something that we extend our prayers to. Obviously, we have taken note of what has happened this week. Specifically for me, what was of interest was the celebration of the World Press Day. They called it the World Press Day.
World Press Freedom Day.
The World Press Freedom Day. Strong reflections on the development of the fourth estate in Uganda, which is also ideally called what would be called the fourth arm, that helps in critiquing, observing, but also shaping public perception. And I'm hoping that this is part of the contribution we are making to change the course of our nation, but also the course of discussion, because I strongly believe that such platforms are relevant in shaping national, political, economic, social discussion. So again, my pleasure being here, and thank you very much for hosting me.
Thank you, Simon. Like I said, Simon is a lawyer and a social critic. Dr. Rugarama is a scholar, but also a staunch Pan-Africanist. We will also be joined by the Honorable Patrick Samba Oshabe, Member of Parliament for Kasanda North. But we will quickly make a comment on what is happening in Kenya. If you look at the devastation that has really been witnessed in these 3-4 weeks in Kenya and Tanzania, the death and the horror that is being reported from our immediate neighbors, you cannot say we are safe. Anyway, we cannot be safe. And quickly, before we introduce our main topics for discussion this morning, Simon, you indeed say it is the hand of God.
Yes.
Indeed it is. But some of these events we have witnessed in Kenya and Tanzania have been partly attributed to the works of man, to how the environment has been decimated, how we have not taken keen interest in protecting the environment. Just one comment, because we have also had our own share of these natural calamities here. What has always happened in Bududa, and actually even this week in Bunyangabu, Western Uganda, I think 4 people died as a result of natural disasters.
I think something that Apollo we need to learn how to have in this country, and I think world over, is an honest discussion of where we are firmly rooted as a people. Now, I make specific comparative analysis to, for example, Uganda. We say in our motto that for God and my country.
True.
Now, that means that the source of our hope is God. Now, any attribution for anything has to be seen in that lens. For example, if you're going to shape a society which is responsible, there has to be a strong moral fabric rooted in the belief in God. That is where the fear for the protection of life is. That is where the respect for humanity is, the respect for the elderly, the respect for the rule of law is grounded. Now, it is normally very possible that in discussion of catastrophic incidents, the safest place to play it, or the most logical place to explain it, is the hand of man, the failure to follow the progressive standards of what climate change discussion has to offer, among other things. Now, that cannot be taken out of picture and out of the context. But I always want to tell you what will stand above everything else, from my worldview, is the hand of God.
I get you.
It's extremely very important that you don't underplay that factor. You see, even if you look back into biblical history, at the time when the likes of Egypt suffered a lot of what you call catastrophic losses, whether it was in the plagues, they suffered the floods, the loss of their children, amongst other things, the drought and all the invasion of locusts and all that other thing, there was always an attribution.
Simon, I hope you don't dismiss the fact that we have decimated the forests, we have built in wetlands, and possibly these are the consequences of a human action.
That is only part of the discussion. And the purpose of such social discussion is for us to expand the picture, not to be narrowed down to what only scientists present. Science has its place, extremely relevant, and I give credit to it. But I'm trying to show you an alternative view that, if not considered, can actually have much more catastrophic consequences. As a people, as an African people, we are believers, and there is always a supernatural force beyond the natural.
I understand you.
And I know, for example, in such political commentary, it is not something that is very palatable for the audience or for the viewers. Why? It's a new discussion. Most people will tell you, but we don't make sense of what you're saying. But it's actually something which you cannot ignore. Now, until there are bolder people who can bring this discussion to the forefront, it will always be, unconsidered. But also for you, especially in the week where you're celebrating World Press Freedom Day, it's an opportunity for you to begin charting a course which nations have not charted, which people have not charted. You have to be bold. I'll give you an example from the Kenyan incident.
Quickly, please.
One of the things that has been happening, you've seen how they've been attacking one of their own, this CNN correspondent, Larry Madowo. One of the things I've been accusing Larry Madowo is for presenting the facts on the ground. Now, the narrative which I want to challenge today, which has always happened in the media, is that, for example, when Larry Madowo begins reporting authentic news on the ground, he is attacked for blackmailing the nation. When he is apparently presenting the narrative that he has caught himself in, then he is attacked. You get what I'm talking about?
Yes, that he's painting a bad picture of their country, of his own country.
And that's why I don't want you, Apollo, and many of the journalists to fall prey to. Because whenever you play in that safe space, at one time it will turn against you.
Okay.
There has to be a bolder move to move away from that. When Larry Madowo has attempted to make a firm stand against what is happening in Kenya, then all of a sudden he's labeled as a person, as an economic saboteur, as a person who doesn't wish his nation good, as a person who is incompetent. When he's in, this very week, they were celebrating the taking on of another lady called Rubadiri, again to become a CNN correspondent. So they are celebrating when there is a narrative which is agreeable. As long as there's an agreeable narrative, then all of a sudden you are the one who looks bad.
Thank you. Dr. Daniel, Simon brings in the aspect of the hand of God in what is happening. But of course we know that on the ground, human action has played a big part also in these events, in these catastrophic climatic events.
Truth be told, when you move around the world, Africa is paradise. And especially when you look at East Africa, it has got a very special place in the sense that our vegetation, river system, soil, the water bodies, wherever they exist, there has been a lot to do with man's activities to nature that have been very detrimental. And even when, of course, my colleague here, being a lawyer, will always talk about an act of God. Granted, there are certain situations that
supernatural happen.
When they do happen, where man really does not have any direct input. But when such catastrophe occur and you are prepared, you have not negatively impacted the nature, you will find that you are in a better position to withstand what would be the consequences. We have got the following. We have got weakness in terms of legislation, and even where we have got legislation like in Uganda, very tough laws, there is a very serious problem on implementation.
That is true.
Now, when you combine weak legislation with weak enforcement, then you get a problem like we're having in Kenya.
It's really bad, really bad.
Sorry, what is happening, because 200 people, even one death is bad enough. 200 is unforgivable. Now, the political leadership is another challenge, that you are given the mandate by the people, you have a social contract with them to govern on their behalf. Sometimes you must take very tough decisions, because if it's like what is happening in Uganda, you look at the transport sector and you look at borders in Kampala, it's a nightmare. Now we can't continue like that. We have also equally talked about, I think God is still very kind to us, but what is happening in Kenya or Nairobi,
yes,
for that matter, could as well have happened here in Kampala, and it will be catastrophic. So in a way of summarizing on this,
yeah, please do.
We need to emphasize legislation where there are some weaknesses, but most importantly where the legislation exists and we have got bodies, they are mandated bodies within our leadership, which are not doing the enforcement part of it. And you can't cheat nature.
Yeah, that is true.
It will always find its level. Like we say, water will always find its level.
Nature will always fight back.
It will fight back, and the way it fights back is very aggressive. You can't stop it. We do not have the means. We were being challenged by locusts just recently. Locusts. And people were making money, you know how Ugandans can be sometimes, not patriotic, majority of them, lacking in Pan-African credentials, you know, having an opportunity to, getting an opportunity to steal here and there. But if we do not check ourselves and we let the kind of doing things willy-nilly, I can assure you that what is happening in Kenya will happen in Kampala. I'm not a Jewish prophet, and it will happen tenfold.
We pray that it doesn't happen.
Pray so.
And of course, to me, it's a grim reminder to the authorities here that we must do something about it. If it is happening in Kenya, our immediate neighbors, in Tanzania, our immediate neighbors, it can happen here. And when it happens, are we ready for it? That is the question I put you. But of course, the big stories in the week are the sanctions that were imposed by the UK government on top government officials in Uganda. The Right Honourable Speaker of Parliament, Anita Among, and two former ministers, Mary Godet Chitutu, Honourable Agnes Nandutu, were sanctioned. Travel bans and asset freezes were announced on these three top government officials, but I must tell you this is not the first time the UK government and the United States of America is imposing similar sanctions on government officials, but of course this time around it's about corruption. And the UK government stated that Chitutu and Nandutu embezzled thousands of iron sheets from a government-funded housing project designed to assist vulnerable communities in Karamoja. And according to the statement from Britain's Deputy Foreign Minister Andrew Mitchell, Among Anita was found to have benefited from the proceeds of the theft, according to the statement. And quoting from this statement, the actions of these individuals who took aid meant for those in need and kept the proceeds for themselves represent the epitome of corruption and have no place in society. We're talking about the sanctions, we are talking about the travel ban, we are talking about asset freezes, but of course Parliament responded in a statement. They said these must be politically motivated. It's not about corruption, because Right Honourable Anita Among has never been formally indicted through maybe slap charges or courts of law, she has never been. And actually, from the words of Anita Mong, she says she's being witch hunted because she was at the forefront of passing the Anti-Homosexuality Act. Here we are. But of course, another story we'll be looking at, if time allows, is the comments that were made by His Excellency the President. He was both on two events in Kenya and at the labor celebrations, where the President of Uganda said, and not only said but criticized the attitude of Ugandans towards work. We will quote his statements, but if possible we'll run a video to make it clear that indeed the President said Ugandans have a bad attitude towards work. They are not listening to his advice on how they can make wealth or create wealth, and that is why they are speaking about jobs and employment in a country where there is a lot of wealth. Let me start with you, Dr. Daniel Rugarama, straight to the issue of the UK sanctions on government officials in Uganda. Indeed, we can agree that corruption is a monster within us. And indeed, the government of Uganda somehow has failed to deal with corruption in this country. Should we really appreciate the sanctions?
Our dear viewers, from the onset I must state that I do not in any way condone theft or corruption in whatever manner it manifests itself. Right Honorable Annette Among, the Speaker of National Parliament, has never been formally charged. Leave alone our brother Honorable Gorobi, Honorable Chitutu, and Honorable
Agnes Nanduto,
who are battling their way out of court. I therefore find it a bit battling as to where the government of Britain got the basic evidence to sanction our speaker for participating in stealing Mabati. If she had been charged, I would understand. Two, I also want to believe that even those who are saying that because she's, when you look at her constitution and you look at her position, she's number 3.
Yeah, true.
Now, if you begin wantonly sanctioning our number 3 without having firm foundation upon which you are doing it, it is an indictment to our national parliament that, look, regardless of what you do, we as the British government, we have our way and we can do it whenever and whoever we want to do it. That in itself is also to say that the people of Uganda who made a decision through their members of parliament about the homosexuality issue are also to be blamed, and anything can happen anytime. But what is of critical importance also, looking at the bit of history, is that corruption in Uganda cannot be dismissed as not existing. There are certainly pockets of corruption here and there, and sometimes it comes out glaring and you get scared.
Dr. Ugarama, you're saying there are certainly pockets of corruption. When the Ombudsman, the IGG, came out clearly with a report showing that 10 trillion shillings is embezzled every year in Uganda, and you say there are pockets of corruption here and there?
You see, corruption must be looked at from the broader picture. We have to get the broader picture. I am not making a case for corrupt people and corruption as such in the country called
10 trillion is massive. That is massive.
Yes, in an economy like Uganda, that's a lot of money. And I have already stated that I do not make a case for corrupt people. I do not condone corruption. And I don't want even to make comparisons, because I would tell you that if anybody should shut up when it comes to corruption, it is the British government. These guys, for crying out loud, they participated in slave trade. They are the guys who came and carried out direct colonialism. They took our raw materials, including human beings. They are now at it through imperialism. They, through with their cousins, the Americans, through the Bretton Woods institutions of the World Bank and IMF, they are stealing left and right Africa and the rest of the world. Africa has never sanctioned them. They don't even have the
moral authority
to begin talking about corruption in the manner in which they are talking about it.
So are you saying they should let us steal public funds because they are also corrupt?
That's what I said. I said I wouldn't say, because if I started making comparisons in that manner, it would look as if I am making a case for the corrupt people here in Uganda. I am not. I am saying, in exercising what the British government has done, that is Deputy Foreign Minister didn't even know the difference between Congo and Rwanda. He was asked a question as to the policy that all the immigrants going to Britain, and what about where is the situation between Rwanda, the ones coming from DRC, going and then they are taken to he was like. So
you're also challenging his intellect on matters of.
I know that one can forget something. We all forget, but clearly the guy is raw about some of these issues. And let me conclude this.
Please conclude.
I don't want to leave this thing hanging. I want to tell listeners and the viewers that what the British government has done is a clear attempt, as far as our Right Honourable Speaker of Parliament is concerned, is a clear attempt at social imperialism.
Good.
Their problem is actually not even the stealing of the Mabati, because Anita Mungu never participated there. It was rumored. The issue is about homosexuality and how we have resoundingly rejected.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Simon, like I said in the beginning, corruption is a monster within us here. But here is the UK government coming to punish the corrupt. Again, possibly saying, you have failed. The institutions in Uganda have failed to rein on the corrupt. Here we are. Should we welcome the sanctions, according to you?
All right. Now, my approach to that discussion has to, first of all, because of my understanding as a lawyer, I have a duty to, first of all, help the public to understand
Go ahead.
the foundation in law, so that we're able to further the discussion. Number one, what are sanctions? In the most easiest terms possible, sanctions are punitive or coercive measures. They can be adopted by a nation or more than one nation for the end game of enforcing compliance with international norms or laws.
Ah, yeah.
Now, we have to go back to revisit the basis of how the sanctions were developed. This is the UK's argument, or the foundation in its law. The UK has a law called the Sanctions Act of 2008. The purpose of the Sanctions Act, when you read, when you invited me for this show, I took off time just to go and revisit the discussion in the House of Commons as to how the Sanctions Act was developed. The basis of the Sanctions Act was founded in number one, that the UK has an international legal obligation as per the UN Charter to ensure that the question of corruption is dealt with.
It's their obligation.
It has an international legal obligation. Likewise, all nations which are part of the UN Charter, and mind you, Uganda is part of the UN Charter. It's one of the 193 countries which signed up to the UN Charter. Number two, remember sanctions are coercive and punitive. To the extent of the UN Charter, they are punitive. To the extent of UK's position, because the UK's argument is that, look here, we have a permanent seat on the UN Security Council, therefore we can use the global security systems to deal with corruption. So to the extent of UK's position in the UN Security Council, they are coercive. Now, the viewers need to understand that Britain has a couple of what you have to understand in terms of the statecraft, that there is something called the sanctions regime, or the nature of the sanction approach of the UK. Basically on two fronts. Number one, called the Global Anti-Human Rights Regulations and the Global Anti-Corruption Regulations. Now, the minister from the UK, the basis, I think, is the state, the state
Deputy Minister.
Deputy Foreign.
The deputy foreign minister, whatever, the minister in charge of sanctioning this, grounds himself in number one, that under our global anti-corruption sanctions, we have a duty not to deal with only the UK citizens, but all those who benefit from the UK system. Because the question the viewer will raise is that, which also, because I want you to compare that with the statements the Right Honourable Monga has made. Number one, when the US gave sanctions, what was the argument? She said she doesn't need a visa to the US. Why? She only needs a visa to Bokedia. Now, number two, the argument which my brother, Dr. makes, and which you also make, and I think also which the minister made, which is problematic from my eyes as a lawyer, is for you to think that because Honorable Anita Mong has not been charged or indicted by the courts of law, therefore she's apparently innocent to the extent of the sanctions, which is problematic. Let me give you the understanding in law what sanctions are meant to do. Sanctions aren't founded on the criminal high standard of proving beyond reasonable doubt.
Oh.
No. Sanctions are actually supposed to be enforced towards a civil standard of obligation. Now, in the civil standard of obligations, it's not that I have been charged.
It doesn't matter whether you've been arraigned in court or charged.
That is now that's a skewed legal interpretation. The right legal interpretation is that sanctions are to be seen from a civil obligation of a balance of probabilities. So therefore, what is the duty of the UK government? The UK government doesn't need to prove that this person was charged. No, they only have to prove that there was an unlawful conduct that was committed. Now, is there evidence of unlawful conduct?
Exactly. How do they come to that conclusion?
It is evident. Remember, read the letter that was issued by the State Minister of Foreign Affairs of Uganda. He says that number one, by the way, the corruption UK is counting on was unveiled by our government agencies.
Yeah, that is true.
His argument. But remember, you visit historically what caused the star of this. It didn't come from just the Mabati. No, there's been evidence which has been piling up concerning civil action through what you've been calling the social media exhibitions.
Oh, the
that have
parliament
labeled
exhibition.
Parliament to have issues of misappropriation of resources, among other things. So it is not about proving that Anita Mong was charged criminally or implicated. No, it's about the government saying that has there been any form of unlawful conduct.
So it may not be about the iron sheets, the Karamoja iron sheets. It may be about other allegations of corruption.
Now remember, the UK government centers on the iron sheets because for them, according to their law, they have two kinds of corruption. They have what is the ordinary corruption, then there's something they call the serious corruption.
Oh.
Now, that's why I'm referring you to the what is called the Sanctions Act of the UK, which is the law they are basing on. It categorizes serious corruption as a form of corruption which it comes from individuals who hold public office or number two are highly connected. You want to read into the discussion of how they have sanctioned, for example, the Russian oligarchs. Remember that?
After the
That's
Russian-Ukraine
the
war.
basis. Yes, that was the basis of their sanctioning. And thank God Dr. here mentioned the comparison even with what the US is doing when it was dealing with the likes of Cuba, among other nations. So the point is this. There could be other political motivations such as homosexuality. Okay, you can't rub that off. Okay, because you see the same Honorable Bobby Wine who is now fronting the case of, look here, let Among be punished, was the same Bobby Wine who was punished
By the same government.
by the same government. That's why actually it's very dangerous for him to begin parroting the narrative of let Among be punished by sanctions, because he has suffered. He doesn't realize that now he has become an agent of imperialism by attacking. He's now a bulldog. But that's a further discussion. The point is this. We need to appreciate the legal regime that is being used. We need to appreciate the intention of sanctions. Then we need to read into actually why are they being extended and why is the noise being made more around Honorable Among?
Or not on the other two government officials?
Because it is skewing public debate to your advantage for you to simply say that look here, it's Among is being punished because of homosexuality, and then you're downplaying the many people of Karamoja who suffered the losses because of the misappropriation of resources. Again, it is those who are advantaged in power who come and use media platforms to parrot their narrative of innocence, or the public. I like how Honorable Johnson made it. You're running us into your public anger because now you're being implicated. But you don't think about the thousands of Ugandans who have suffered because of that, because of your actions, because of your inactions. But I'll give you one final remark.
Please do.
Thank God Honorable Shara is here. You see, one of the lessons, especially the people who are in the politics of the day, one of the things that was very telling around Honorable Among's handling of this, you can tell from how Chris Obole responded, how the government responded, and how Honorable Among responded, even some of how the opposition leaders have responded. I don't think our political class has invested in especially the relevant advisory political advisory angles that would aid them in dealing with such international sanctions. When you look at some of the politicians who seek to play such a game, they have invested heavily, even including Mr. Museveni. They have invested heavily.
We'll dig deeper into the impact of these sanctions as all the officials that have been sanctioned have come out to dismiss these sanctions as inconsequential and
mine isn't on the impact. Mine is on the handling and the preparedness of such things.
Okay.
Because you see, we seem to have a political class which seems to be unprepared to play on an international platform. The likes of now the Honorable Monks. And you can tell from how they have handled and how they're responding to the sanctions. They seem to be shocked. Ideally, what would be the ideal situation if I was a lawyer advising? Number one, there has to be investment in appreciating the dealings of on an international platform in the context of statecraft. That there has to be an advisory angle, yes, and diplomacy, for you to understand how do I respond to such. Because one of the things that they don't realize, I will show you a clause where we're coming, that actually they think Among is the one implicated. When you read the UK Sanctions Act that is being used, I am aware even the DPP can be implicated.
The DPP?
The DPP.
For?
The provision of the law in the Sanctions Act says, should you be holding an office which is supposed to be investigating, and you carelessly or non-reluctantly choose to pursue justice in that context, you can be implicated.
So it's more serious than what
it's more serious than what you're seeing. And the more they make such careless statements,
I get you, Simon.
They're potentially implicating.
I get you, Simon. You made it clear that from the legal point of view, the sanctions are really real.
Yes, they are.
From the legal, because people were questioning really, how can the UK government really meddle into the domestic affairs of another country? And you said they are actually grounded in the UN Charter.
The UN Charter, yes.
They are mandated to do what they have done. That's what you said.
Yes.
Okay. I take the pleasure to introduce to you viewers Honorable Patrick Oshabensamba, and he is the Member of Parliament for Kath Thunder North. But he also served as a member of the Pan-African Parliament. I'm happy to have you on the dialogue this morning. Speak to our viewers.
Thank you. Thank you very much, my brother. Thank you very much, Simon and Doug. Well done. I'm sorry for arriving.
It's okay, Honorable.
Quite a little late. But I'm pleased with the discussions and the submissions of my young brothers.
Good. Go straight and to the point and tell us what you make of these sanctions on top government officials. The Speaker of Parliament is number 3 in the leadership hierarchy in this country, being implicated by the UK government, and now she can not travel to the UK and possibly to the other allies, and even the assets have now been frozen. Though she says that she doesn't even own a pussycat in the UK.
One, I'm excited on one hand, but also at pain on the other hand. Why I am excited is that in this our country, all avenues to stop corruption have been almost closed. Why I say that? All accountability institutions have been politicized to the extent that you must be a supporter of the regime to hold a position there. And once you are appointed not on merit, you are appointed for the purpose that you support of the regime, then you must support the regime.
That's also corruption.
Yeah.
Nepotism.
When you see the patronage going on in government institutions across, it tells you that it is promoting corruption without any ability to say nothing about it. When you see parliamentary committees and what goes on in accountability committees,
you can tell us,
where they produce a report implementing a government official, and the government official runs to the speaker or
implicating
to, yes, runs to the president, and the president comes out in full force to protect that person. It tells you that all effort that there is to support the desire of Ugandans to see the politically corrupt or the corrupt people implicated or punished are closed in our country. Recently, the young people went on social media. I'll say the young people, because very many older people don't follow social media that much, but I would say the young people came to Parliament and I think they were doing a scrutiny of the Parliament of Uganda, and they found lots of rot in there, in our institution. But when the president appeared in Bukedia over the same, he said it is the foreign agents that are harassing using social media. Now, you may recall that Facebook and other social media were closed purposely for young people questioning certain things using social media. Remember, they were chased off the streets. It's a taboo to go on the streets of Uganda to make any protest of any nature, to the extent that the young people that came out to protest against the Mabati up to now, Mabati thieves, up to now they're still in prison.
No, that is true.
So when you hear almost everyone almost keeping quiet, because it is risky for you to talk about the corrupt in this our country, it becomes, and if anybody talks about the corrupt, you get excited.
Oh.
Yes.
That is why you said you are partly excited about these
yes,
sanctions.
because I'm a Ugandan, where even when I talk about corruption in the parliament where I am, I represent the people, it makes no meaning. And you just get your fellow members of parliament wondering why actually you're talking about the corrupt. Why are you talking about corruption? So I am excited on one hand to the extent that the UK came out to say, hey, we are stakeholders in Uganda. We contribute greatly to what is going on to the finances. We have been supporting Karamoja region for some time. Actually, UK, I think, has been the biggest supporter of Karamoja. So if they come out to say, hey, in Uganda, you may have closed down all the routes where people can protest, but we can use what we have to say something about, to make a statement about the corruption in the country. So that's why I am excited to see a foreign power, a foreigner coming through at a time when we are all thinking it is more safer to keep quiet. You remember when the Honorable Matthias Impuga and other commissioners were implicated? It was wise. It was wise to handle it calmly, and I know people who blamed Bobby Wine said, that's not how they handle people who are corrupt. You're risking. So it was wiser to handle them well, listen to them, because it is risky.
So Honorable, you agree with the narrative from sections of Ugandans who think that the UK government is coming to help speak against the impunity in this country.
When somebody,
in handling
when
corruption.
you lose a loved one and you see somebody crying, you automatically cry more. You'll think this person has come to grieve with me. Now Ugandans are in that state that if they hear any other person, even if it was an Arab world or even if it was another country where they say there is corruption of the highest order in Uganda, they will automatically, many Ugandans, except the beneficiaries, because we have a group of Ugandans who are benefiting from the corruption, and for them they do not appreciate that they don't appreciate the mismanagement that is going on. Now, why? On the other hand, I lose my excitement is that UK, USA, and those big nations have been funding our budget for some time. Lots of big monies have been stolen. Big resources stolen at their watch. And they really do nothing.
Perhaps they are now doing something.
Now, they seem like they want to do something. But I know they will end it there.
Really?
Yeah. They will end it to tell you, you know, we did something. We also imposed the sanctions. But the question is, how does that one help the villager in Kasanda who is missing out on a child's education because there cannot be teachers in school?
The sanctions, the travel ban, the asset freezes that have been announced will not in any way.
Yes, because they are not going to do that tomorrow. They are going, tomorrow they are going to send more money to the Prime Minister's office, the same government, to be stolen.
It is with mixed feelings that the Honorable Patrick Oshabe-Nsamba is receiving the announcement about sanctions, but of course Simon says indeed it is legally correct, and it's a mandate of the UK government to step in where they feel there is injustice being going on in any country. And Dr. Daniel Rugarama says this is not about corruption. There are other underlying issues, especially the passing of the Anti-Homosexuality Act. My name is Prince Apollo. Let's go for a break. But when we return in the second hour, we'll dig deep to look at the impact on the effects of these sanctions on these individuals and how far they can help to deal with corruption, which has become a monster in our country. Let's go for a break. When we return, it is the dialogue and it is the big show. Stay on, we'll be right back. Welcome from the break. This is the dialogue. My name is Prince Apollo. In the studio, Dr. Daniel Rugarama, a scholar and a Pan-Africanist. We have Simon Senyonga, a lawyer and a social critic. We have Honorable Patrick Nsamba Oshabe, the Member of Parliament for Kasanda North, but he also served in the Pan-African Parliament.
Actually, I serve. I'm a member of the Pan-African Parliament.
Oh, you're a member. You continue to serve. He continues to serve as the member of the Pan-African Parliament, discussing the big events, but more particularly the sanctions by the UK government on top government officials, the Speaker of Parliament, together with the two former ministers for Karamoja, were this week sanctioned. These impositions, including travel bans, and of course asset freezes. And the Speaker of Parliament came out to say the sanctions are politically motivated, and whatever the case, she has nothing to lose because she does not even own a pussycat in Britain. Well, of course, that has been a response from majorly all those that have been sanctioned in Uganda. They say they don't have assets in the UK. This is all about the anti-homosexuality law, which is hugely supported by the West. But of course, we look at the gist of the matter. What could these sanctions mean if number 3 in this country is not allowed to travel to the US, now to the UK and their allies? Really, can't we reflect on what actually is the subject matter? Corruption. I said it's a monster, and indeed it is. Patrick Oshabe, you said you received the announcement with mixed reactions. You are excited. On the other hand, you think they are inconsequential. They will not actually be affected. Britain will continue to pump aid in Uganda, and you're not happy about that.
You know, it is surprising that how could a legislator like me come out to say they will continue to bring in money. The way those people operate is so funny. When it suits them, they act. And when it doesn't suit them, they look away. They're very inconsistent. Otherwise, they have power over Africa, the rest of Africa. For example, France commands almost the West African countries. UK commands almost the rest of Africa. But when you're looking for the most corrupt leaders, they come from Africa. Supported by who? By those UK government and the allies. So for me, that's where I get the mixed feelings about it. Yes, the speaker might be banned to go to the UK Maybe she was not frequenting there, and maybe it will not impact a lot.
But there are other sanctions that came first from the US, I think.
Yes, maybe
And the
US,
European
maybe she's
Union.
not even interested in going there. The question is, if those are the methods that you're using to support a poor country like Uganda to deal with the corrupt, for me they just look like excuses. Excuses. On one day we will find you dining with Yoweri Museveni because he has a strategic support he gives you in Somalia, or the other, maybe your UK government is interested in mining oil in Uganda. Tomorrow you'll find them dining with the same man who is killing, who is abducting, who is harassing his political opponents, who is doing nothing about the corrupt. Now, when we get excited about that, yes.
So to an ordinary Ugandan,
yes,
these sanctions do not make impact.
Exactly. I would rather be happy if UK told the government that if you don't deal with these and specify that we are tagging our aid to Uganda on these, the speaker must behave as a speaker in a manner that deserves the House of Uganda. The ministers must behave as ministers, as people who know that they are holding offices entrusted by Ugandans. What happens in UK should be advocated for here.
Okay.
Now, when you just put up sanctions, yes, and Simon tried to show their impact, but I really, in my opinion, it's going to end like that.
Business as usual.
Business as usual.
Corruption will continue to thrive.
The thieves will continue to steal because they have a main protector who is Yoweri Museveni, who Yoweri Museveni UK protects every day, USA protects every day to keep in power because he supports them to steal here and there. So, for me, I always think the solution must come from us that deals with the problems that come.
Thank you. Dr. Daniel, the Honorable Nsamba says the sanctions, their impact and effect are inconsequential.
I think radically speaking, let me speak like a Pan-Africanist here. To start with, I would have no problem because I know the impact of corruption. And I said right from the start that I cannot make a case for corrupt people. There is no way if, for instance, the basis of the sanctions of Britain against our people here is truly on firm foundation that there is corruption rampant and these people have been found to be corrupt, and therefore we also help the Ugandans with a good heart. We are putting sanctions against them. I would have no problem with that. But what I suspect that the English are doing and the government of Sunak and his friends there is much more than what meets an ordinary eye. In fact, I would rather that this time around there should be a diplomatic protest note.
Oh.
Yes.
Through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs?
We need to invite the ambassador, the UK ambassador, to explain this nonsense.
You call it nonsense?
Absolute nonsense. There's nothing here. 1. 2, there has got to be a very strong communication from the President of the Republic of Uganda to his counterpart Sunak about this as well. And what I expect in that letter is that if this is not reversed,
we record our ambassador.
1, we no longer want the following. You see, you must learn
Okay.
to, you must learn to, you know, reject certain things. We no longer want the following from you. Then I see if we are going to die.
But
Yes,
Daniel Rugama, we are a poor country.
we are not.
Which
we are not
is
poor.
relying on aid.
We have been told that we are poor.
With major
but we are not
sectors
poor.
like education and health, relying majorly on donor funding.
Let me tell you, I have been to Pyongyang.
That is South Korea?
Korea.
No, that is North Korea.
That's North Korea. DPRK. And not a 1 day's visit. I have almost traversed the country several times. It is under almost 100% sanctions. The quality of education is high. They are developing nuclear weapons.
You want us to live the way the North Koreans are living?
And this is the problem, by the way. Somebody asked me a question.
Because we don't want
just a minute,
somebody to talk about our corruption and our bad manners.
Apollo, wait a minute. I told you here that if anybody has got bad manners, and I refuse being dragged into comparison that because we do this, I mean because the British do this, they are more corrupt, therefore we should also be corrupt. I don't want to go there. But I want to tell you that, for instance, these sanctions sometimes, and in the majority of the cases, by the way, are baseless and they are tagged to nothing save for the arrogance of the English and the Americans. Look, wait a minute. Cuba is under sanctions.
Yeah, has been always under sanctions.
Almost 60 years now. Has it stopped Cuba, for instance, from having the best life expectancy? They are 85 and above. Do even the Americans live up to that age?
Okay.
The education system in Cuba is one of the best. Is one of the best. They have sanctioned Venezuela. Why? Simply because Venezuela said we need an alternative way of managing our natural resource called oil. Therefore, for me, I repeat as I conclude,
my
problem is not that there are sanctions on the basis of people who are corrupt. If they are there, let the sanctions be put on them. Even a country, by the way, after all, if you put on number 3 of the country, where what else is left? But as long as we do not learn to live within our means, somebody out there at plot is it to 10 in London will sit because he gives you some little token, some aid here and there, and dictate how you should run the country. Let corruption stop here, granted, but let Britain learn not to impose its culture on us.
Thank you so much, our viewers. You can be part of this discussion. You can send in your comments and observations, and I will now implore the production to run our number on the screen and keep it there for some time. Let members who are watching send their comments via WhatsApp or use the SMS platform, the short messaging system. Send your comments and observations. Tell us what you think about these sanctions imposed on top government officials, their impact, and possibly what could be the underlying issues behind these sanctions. Tell us what you think and make your comments brief, because I'll be reading them out in 10 minutes from now. Honorable, did you want to make a comment, a quick one, before I bring in Simon?
I really want to think Doc is unfair.
Doctor is saying we should even go the North Korea way. We can survive.
We can.
His argument is of a person who supports a regime, and he doesn't care how the regime. My argument was, I welcome
the sanctions,
them to do whatever they can, because all avenues for us to fight for ourselves have been closed. And his argument, he says, to hell with your aid. Actually, I want to say we need more aid.
Really?
It's terrible.
We need more aid. from them if it is proper aid.
Oh, you're speaking like President Museveni this week when he was in Nairobi. He said the aid we have been receiving for all these years has not helped us.
Yeah, and where I become different from Museveni is that part of the biggest monies that we collect as our tax revenues here is squandered, is stolen.
Yeah.
The Uganda Revenue Authority collects about 25 trillion, and we steal about 20 trillion of
10.
that.
That's what we know from the IGG.
10. Maybe, okay, 10. Let's say 10. But 10 is not little money.
Yeah, true.
10 can fix all the schools, 10 can fix all the hospitals, 10 can fix all the roads, if it was given to. Now, where I differ with him, I want UK, instead of just giving and throwing money to Museveni and his regime, who are very corrupt, to come and say, hey, we want to give you money if you fix corruption, other than sitting there to say...
But that is what they are doing. They are saying the sanctions are a signal that if you don't check your appetite for corruption, then we will possibly do something.
Answer me why
don't we get better trading terms? Why don't we restore AGOA?
Okay.
And then we export our garments properly? Yes.
So
I want to bring in Simon, but you can conclude, Honorable.
So I want to dissociate myself from Doc, who thinks that when the big brothers talk about how we are running the situation here, they are bad. They are not. My worry is that they will not seem to be very serious. If they were serious...
What do you want them to do?
If they were serious, I would be happy with them. Actually, my argument wants them to be more serious.
Yes.
Yes.
So you want tougher sanctions.
Exactly. Tougher things that can, say, move the speaker from her position. Say, move a minister from her position. And put pressure on Museveni to say, why do you keep this minister here?
Okay.
When that minister is corrupt? Why do you keep a CEO of an agency when that one is corrupt?
Okay. That is the Honorable Patrick Nsamba, and we can you can keep those messages coming in. Tell us what you think about the sanctions from the West, and the latest are from the UK government, imposing travel bans and asset freezes. And actually, that is why I want to bring in Simon. The people who have been sanctioned are saying they don't have assets. Do you think the UK and the US governments can impose asset freezes on people who do not even have assets in the UK or in their countries?
I think that was one of the last points I was making before Honorable Oshabe came in. The point I was making was that, number one, the people who take on political office need to interest themselves in the international legal regime that will potentially affect them. One of the things our politicians have done, and now why they are crying foul, is that they don't interest themselves in understanding the international legal regimes. And because of that, when it comes down biting, they will make all manner of misguided statements. Number one, under the law that they're referring to, the UK global anti-corruption sanctions and regulations, you need not to have an asset for you to have an asset freeze. The effect of the sanction is that you will not enjoy the benefits of anything to do with the UK system or the global system that is related to the UK system. It is, remember, the strategy of the UK is based on, number one, disrupt, deter, demonstrate. That's the principle of their sanction regime. Number one, disrupt anybody who is trying to use the UK system to benefit from corruption. Number two, deter anyone or any system which is trying to benefit. Then demonstrate to the world that actually you have a competent system. Now, an asset freeze, that means that you don't need to have an asset in the UK. But also number two, it is because we haven't done a thorough investigation to find out whether actually some of these individuals have assets. Remember the debate that happened in Kenya when almost the same things were coming up? Remember the Panama paper leaks that were happening in Kenya with the Kenyan government? It's until the Panama paper leaks that happened, the
Kenyans got to know.
Yes, they kept on saying that no, we don't have any assets, we don't have any this, we don't have any that. Us, we are free. Now, that is number one. But also, number two, if you have to look at it, if you have to bring the debate back home, how come, especially, I like taking you guys on in the media. You guys in the media, or even us who have been given a chance to sit on these platforms, we are completely disinterested in the internal affairs of the UK. And because of that, we come out as crybabies because we can't take them on their narrative. Now, it's a thin line from what Doctor is trying to argue. Doctor is trying to argue that, number one, don't try to make a comparative analysis to justify stealing. But you must always be interested in also the other affairs because they're using the same ball game. I'll give you an example. About a couple of months ago, Rishi Sunak's government was brought to light for being extremely incompetent. You've been following the whole debate around the dealings with Rwanda. That was one of the most expository. But also the other one, he fired one of his key critics, a former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, coming out to say that, look here, your government is incompetent, your government cannot keep promises, and actually even you, Rishi Sunak, you are not designed, you are not intending to uphold what you call your foreign policy. It was in the context of, I think, what was happening in Cuba. Now, us in this platform seem not to bring to light what is happening in those governments, to expose them for what they are. Remember, Apple, I think we had discussions during the COVID-19 days. It was one of the best days to bring out the hidden agendas of foreign governments. The
real face of
the West. For example, the UK, which is trying to lecture Uganda on being competent. One of the failures of their sanctions, the UK sanctions, that they put on the Russian oligarchs was that, look here, the Russian oligarchs were the biggest funders of the Conservative Party, which is currently running the UK. And because of that, the UK itself failed to implement the sanctions. Now, you're having the UK, which has been grossly exposed to be corrupt by failing to impose its own sanctions on Russian oligarchs. You're talking about the unfair dealings with Rwanda. You're talking about the Prime Minister who fires his biggest critic. We haven't yet even gone to the US to talk about how they are dealing with their biggest opposition leader, Donald Trump.
So what is the point?
The point I am making is that, look here, the foundation of sanctions, beyond the legal enforcement, is a moral backdrop. There has to be an attitude and a culture of shame. Shame does not only discredit people, but it causes a certain source of public order amongst those who are implicated, amongst those who want to implicate. That, look here, you must have a reflective light inside you, not to take a high moral ground to disqualify.
So do you agree with the doctor that the US and the UK lack the moral authority to critique the effectiveness of governments in Africa?
To that extent, they lack the moral authority. Why? They have exposed themselves not to be the best people to lecture us.
But it does not stop them from raising concerns over the irregularities and mismanagement happening in Africa.
That's only part of it. It's a wake-up call for the Africans to also be interested in what happens in those foreign countries which want to lecture us. That's why I was giving you those examples. Because you see, for you not to pick interest in what is happening with their dealings is for you to really get your position. And inadvertently, what you're doing is that when they call on you, when they begin telling you, by the way, you are incompetent, you have no way around it. You have no way of raising it. So
you will haphazardly respond, and like we've seen. I mean, because you're not competent enough to even critique them, you will respond haphazardly.
Because you have to look here, even if you have to look at the historical order of how the UK organized itself before it fell out with the US, historically speaking. you're having a nation which can stand up against the UK to say, look here, you will not colonize us. What does this situation teach us? The likes of Honorable Nsamba, what they have to learn, that they have gotten the privilege and opportunity of being in political office. This is their opportunity to begin questioning the international legal regime, whether it works for us.
Okay.
And finally, I'll tell you this as a lawyer.
Please do.
That right now, one of the things we are suffering, because the UK sanctions are strong because of how the UK has positioned itself in the international legal system. That's why they keep on saying we are a permanent member of the UN Security Council, therefore we shall use coercive means. Now, where I would agree with Mr. Museveni is that, look here, he is creating a new order that is taking us away from being obedient to this so-called international order. Let me tell you something historically, I ignore it from these sanctions. Are you aware when UK was still part of the entire European Union before the UK Brexit, the sanctions would not come biting like this? As soon as they fell out with that, out of the Brexit, they came up with harsh sanctions.
What does that mean?
What does that mean for the Ugandan person and the Ugandan leader? That look here, make sure that you strengthen your regional cooperation. Make sure that you have a strong voice that can challenge.
The UK and
that is the statement that Mr. Museveni was making at the IDA conference in Kenya. When he said there is nothing like a sustainable pregnancy. You can't be pregnant forever. You know, for the 60 years he has been around, what we have been given is sustainable pregnancy. And he's now saying that let us redesign the ball game, empower our economic systems, don't simply give us lectures, which are calling capacity building. Empower socioeconomic transformation. Now that is the end game of this argument here. That irrespective of what is happening, there is a bigger political order which is being shaken in Uganda, that as leaders we need to rethink if we are going to reattain our position.
Are we doing that? Are we doing that?
I think now we are beginning the conversation, and it's a good place to start from.
Thank you so much, our viewers. And Simon Senyonga is a lawyer. He brings a wealth of experience in that line of the legal aspect of this whole topic. And here the message is coming in. We cannot stand without aid. And that person arguing, and I suspect that is doctor, he is scared because it may lead to not even eat the aid from UK by those corrupt. It's really bad to pose as a Ugandan in this regime of heartless leaders. Okay, it is your message, and from the status, I can see you are Mose. Thank you so much, Mose, and it is your opinion. This top government, he said, thanks for the program. I don't like corruption, but there is something behind these sanctions. I am seeing more sanctions coming. Thank you, Honorable Nsamba, for your contributions. These top government officials are dancing because they are losing nothing, and they have the support of the president. Did you pick that? Yeah. Okay, let me check from the, please give us your names when you send in messages. I can see he's, from the status, he's Adinate Ronald. And it's good to tell us where you're watching from. Thank you so much. Let's continue looking at the comments coming in. This is Aiko Mundu. The name is Aiko Mundu. I think those who are in charge of our country care less about the plight of ordinary Ugandans. Look at the level of arrogance exhibited by one of my guests here. Okay. As if he has been... Let me conclude. I didn't mention him. We didn't mention him and we don't know him. Let me conclude. And he says, look at the level of arrogance exhibited by one of your guests. He mentions him as if he has been coached by the speaker herself. They think immorality is only practice of homosexuality, but stealing is moral. Take note of that. Thank you so much, and let me read the comments, please, and as we conclude. And he says he is Yiga Samuel Mere from Namulondo zone where you're getting. Mr. Apollo, thanks for the show. Africa can be independent without whites who want to violate our cultures. They brought religion and many other things, and Africans by then accepted. This time round, let our top leaders resist their requests. Uganda in particular has enough resources to sustain herself, so long as we do away with corruption and greedy leadership. Hope they are helping us to fight corruption.
That's the argument.
The argument is if we fight corruption, we are good to go. Aren't they helping us to fight
We don't
corruption?
need them to
Okay.
help us.
Thank you so much, Mary Iga Samuel from Mlondo Zone in Bweyogerere. I see messages coming in. Fighting corruption with the wrong spirit is corruption itself. Hear that. Why? I mean, hear that message. That's what I'm saying. Why lower corruption to material things only? This is ideological corruption and many more. Oh, there is ideological corruption and many more. This is Osbert Mugisha from Mutungo, and he adds, foreign aid is corruption to Africans to stop asking for colonial accountability. Yeah, you know you must be smiling. You like.
I'm happy they are seeing these things. Yeah.
Okay. Let me conclude with this, but you can keep those messages coming in. He says, "Good morning. I feel sad when we cover our dirty buttocks with clean clothes, even when we smell. This level of corruption is too much. God will strike them one of these days. Let them continue stealing public funds." Okay. Imagine the speaker owning pressure cars and clothes. No, let them eat. You didn't give me your name. Please send your names alongside these messages. We still have some few minutes there. Please continue sending those messages and your observations. We're still looking at the UK sanctions that were announced this week. And people should not forget that there were other sanctions that came before from the US through
Yes.
is it the Magnitsky
Yeah, that's Magnitsky
Act?
Act.
And
that's where I wanted to tell
okay,
Simon
please come in.
that Simon, President Museveni has no moral authority to talk about social transformation. He poses as a Pan-Africanist.
He's the head of state, head of government.
He's actually our patron, the Pan-African.
Go ahead.
Whether he poses or not is another debate.
Go ahead, Honorable.
He poses as a Pan-Africanist, but somebody who has, if you're CEO of an organization or an agency that forgets what he's supposed to do and does what he's not supposed to do, then you come out and boss around. I always hear President Museveni and his colonies, his people he's working with, whenever they talk about them their corruption, they say, we are a sovereign state. How can you talk about a sovereign state? Uganda is a sovereign state. But hey, when you need support in the army, you go to the same countries.
Yeah.
When you need money to run the country, you go to the same countries. UK alone spends about 100 million pounds every year in Uganda. Now, are you a sovereign state that cannot run your own affairs? USA, if USA,
Yeah, but
if USA pulled out,
the debate is. The
First,
logic,
listen.
Wait a minute. The logic is, if you're giving me aid, respect my sovereignty. That is
no. I
the
can't
basic
make.
thing.
I cannot.
If I'm giving you and you're not doing what I'm telling you to do, and it is me giving you, I have a right as Britain to stop. Let them stop.
Now-
and we die.
Now that is the argument. That is the argument. Common people, people who don't understand how things run, will. I'll give an example. If USA pulled out money in the health sector, in the health sector alone,
struggle and
this country will run down. Will run down. Exactly, because all the money that is put in that sector is stolen here, and nothing goes on.
What was happening before they
So,
started putting
Doctor, I'm not
money?
going to be running
Okay.
a debate like that. I'm just giving my own opinion. Until a time when leaders come out to be accountable and accept mistakes. These are simple, basic things in
Actually, we should
governance.
be asking the likes of Doctor here, what's wrong with us? I mean, streamlining services and accountability and account and become corrupt free. What's wrong with
Let me
that?
actually tell you this. I have stated and I repeat it. I do not condone corruption. I agree with Honorable 101%.
If we don't want them to meddle in our internal politics,
organically,
why can't we fight
just a
prices?
minute. Organically, I agree with the Honorable and my colleague Senyonga here and everybody listening to us that we have capacity in Uganda to organically resist corruption.
Why haven't we?
You cannot
done
have that.
Well,
you cannot.
why haven't we?
You cannot have that.
That when we resist, we are shot on the street. How did Museveni come here?
No,
Was he invited?
you cannot have
Okay.
what he wants
You can conclude.
when you
You
have
had the floor.
illegitimate leaders running the nation. Yes, once you have
Who is
illegitimate,
illegitimate now?
the people running the nation are illegitimate.
Let him make his case.
Yes, illegitimate leaders running the nation. And they pose as democratic, they pose as people, but when we know that when we go for elections, they arrest, they beat, they steal votes, they do, that's what shows that they are illegitimate. Now, until the time that we start respecting Ugandans, to say that we are holding offices on behalf of Ugandans, we are not supposed to be accounting to the UK. We must be accountable to the people,
Ugandans.
the Ugandans that we run.
Have we done that?
Here now.
That's the question.
We look at Ugandans as useless. We look at them as people who don't matter. Yet they are the ones who will pay the money we steal. They are the ones who will pay the money that is borrowed day and night. They are the ones who are going to pay up everything. Even if Museveni goes, they will leave the debts here, the Ugandans will pay them. Now, in those nations, the Sunaks run, the system is an accountable system. And you account to the people that you lead. So they get surprised to see us here. Somebody, if they say we are sanctioning you for corruption, and you claim, I know you're not, that is not your interest. Your interest is homosexuality. Hey, are you clean on this end?
Thank you.
If you were clean on this end, probably you would push the other argument. But the other argument, you're not clean here on stealing. If you were clean that you're not stealing from the poor, then you would come up strongly to your heads up to say,
Yes.
hey, UK, please come through. I have been a clean man. I've been clean, so clean. Come and see my record.
Okay.
And please remove that sanction. But you can't run ahead to say, I know you don't like me, that's why you're sanctioning me,
So
without proving this.
We
the record
have
is
that
straight.
hands, and we want
Coming
to justice. And this is somebody from Rwanda. Hey, somebody watching from Rwanda, and he says, I am Mufuruche Robert from Rwanda. I like how your guests are really interacting. Thank you so much for appreciating.
Some information I wanted to give to Honorable Samba here.
Let me read these messages and then come to you, because I'm coming to you directly. As a developing country, with the goal of getting to a developed level, we need to consider the following. Listen, gentlemen, we need visionary leaders who love the country and its citizens and want the best for the country. The way Ugandan leaders behave is like we are led by spoiled rich kids who were not morally brought upright, and now we are reaping the terrible outcome. Uganda is a small country. Why on earth would you want to have a parliament with 500 plus members that are 100% paid using taxpayers' money? Our income against our expenses don't balance. One outweighs the other. Even Uganda, with the tax collected, instead of minimizing its expenses, it's increasing, buying fancy and expensive cars for its workers, using taxpayers' money and misusing a lot of resources. So unless the government is disciplined, then aid or no aid, this country can be transformed to the level we envision. Thank you so much, and it's been an elaborate comment there. You didn't give us your names, but from the status I see age branding. Okay, please, you should send in your messages, your names alongside your comments. Hi, Mr. Apollo, thanks for the show. I am Butera Samuel from Buikwe. Those Europeans are the bosses of Mr. Museveni because they pretend that they love us, yet not. Let them settle issues of Sudan, Libya, DRC, and others in Uganda. It's we to chase Mr. Museveni and others as he did to the old regimes. It is your comment, and your name is Butera Samuel Kasaga. Thank you so much. My lecturer has sent a piece here. I will want to read it as it is. Chaine Senyonjo, thank you so much. Chaine Senyonjo says, number one, Chaine Senyonjo is the RDC for Nabirakut. The matter of so-called sanctions against officials in Uganda is, should have anything about support for the NRM regime. Should not have anything about support for the NRM regime. The crux of the matter is hegemonic suppression of the weak states by the strong, many of which, like UK, are neo-colonialists. Number two, the matter is about those who support the sovereignty of Uganda and those traitors like, he mentioned someone, who think we must remain the underdogs and dominion of the Imperial North. Number three, this is a Pan-African struggle against self-appointed superintendent of Western upside-down culture of no values. Okay. Number four, so-called aid is trade by which the West continues to perpetuate their economic exploitation of the South through World Bank, IMF, etc. Number five, Africa is for Africans. NUP should ride beyond petty struggle for power and fight for moral values unless they are homos themselves. Chaine Senyonjo, and he says the legacy of the African independence was and still is that Africans should be free to manage and mismanage their affairs until they organize themselves for the better. Organize, do not organize. The question, Chaine Senyonjo, is when will we organize and not agonize? We have had our 60 how many years of independence, but we are still
in... What has Senyonjo said about no?
He said about Noop.
They are homos themselves.
He said about Noop.
What did he say?
Can I read it again? It is so huge.
No, we heard. He said unless the Noop are homos themselves.
Okay.
It was read there.
Okay. Gentlemen, I think we have time now to revert to our viewers. We have like 15 minutes. And somebody says, my name is Apostle Stephen Kakaire from Word of Faith Bulenga. But as for me, I think these sanctions are useless. Because how can you leave some people who in broad daylight opened fire and killed rioters, those who have swindled big sums of money for hospitals, it is unsanctioned those of Mabati? That was the question. And one quick from you. Why would they target Mabati, so-called Mabati thieves? And are they the biggest or the big corrupt, the big fish in corruption in this country?
I think what you need to realize with the operation of a sanctioned legal regime is that it lies
Honorable Nandutu,
it lies majorly on lobbying. So the bigger discussion we haven't had is who had the stronger angle of lobbying to make the Mabati issue a key issue. Because there have been other much more serious crimes that actually that could have been investigated. Now, one of the things that I picked the information I wanted to give.
Please do it. We only have a few minutes.
When you read this regulation they're relying on, this must be regulation 7. I wonder why, because there's selective application of the law here. One of the principle in their law says, if a person is responsible for the investigation or prosecution of serious corruption and intentionally or recklessly fails to fulfill that responsibility, that person should be implicated. Now, why
are you saying even the IGG,
even
the
IGG, the prosecutors,
may also be
the judiciary
with these
under
sanctions?
this law have to be slapped with sanctions?
Now,
what I'm trying to show you was that there's selective application of the law. They're only targeting the so-called beneficiaries of the corruption, but they're not targeting the perpetuators. The argument that normally is made in the media is that, are we victims or we are perpetrators? As a government, we seem to be, I'm not part of it, but the government, which Honorable Samba is part of, because part of the
Dr. Daniel is part of.
Part of the legislature. The government constitutes the executive.
Yeah, he is. Honorable Samba is part of government.
Governance. That's governance. The government is the Is the executive.
No.
Don't put me part of
You're
this
part
regime.
of the three arms of government.
Okay, well, let's not get to the technicalities. The point I'm trying to make here, the principle I'm trying to make here is that, look here, there is selective application of the law. But the person who makes, the Mr. Cherina who says that, what organize, don't agonize. Agonize is on a presumption that there is a proper moral line or ideological angle that we are following, which seems not to be existent right now. So in no way you can't even claim disorganization of something which is non-existent. What this discussion is helping us to have now is for us to redefine who we are as Ugandans. You see, the gap in Honorable Samba's argument is that he presumes that Article 1 of the Constitution says what does it say? That all power belongs to the people. But this animal called people is not defined. Who are the people? It is not defined. As a lawyer, I'll tell you, it's a big constitutional debate we have.
You need to show you who are Ugandans.
No. It's not a logical debate. I'm telling you that even as a constitutional
I didn't
lawyer,
even use the word people. I used the word Ugandan.
Yes, and in the
So you want me to show you Ugandans?
the context of the law, the people is read together as the Ugandans. And I'm trying to show you that even right now we are not defined who the Ugandans are.
Okay.
So because of that, because let me just make the point.
Please do.
Because we have not even defined who the Ugandans are or the value of who Ugandans are, we are having a bigger challenge.
We don't have
that
a
other
clear
people have
value
to
system.
dictate.
That's what you're saying.
They have to dictate.
We lack a clear value system.
I'll tell you, for example, when Among was being taunted by the sanctions, you know what she said? I am carrying the cross of 48 million Ugandans. We never sent her to steal. We never sent her to, you get. That's what
Actually,
this animal called Ugandans hasn't been properly defined. And because of that, we are shifting goalposts.
Make your comment on the narrative that every time people speak about corruption in parliament, the response is, you are homos, you are targeting us because we passed the law. Do you agree with that narrative?
It has two angles to it. Number one, homosexuality will not always be the existent issue. When the Gavi funds were stolen, it wasn't because of homosexuality. All right? When people were killed in 18 September 2018,
20th November
2020, it wasn't because of homosexuality. Now, the argument of homosexuality is a weak argument.
So homosexuality should not be an excuse.
It shouldn't be the main excuse. It is a potential argument, but it shouldn't be the main one.
Okay.
Think about the Ugandans he has talked about in Kasanda, in Karamoja, who are suffering because the money for the healthcare system is being stolen. The Mabati is being stolen. Think about those people. Those people, homosexuality is the least of their concern. They may even be the most detached people. Homosexuality is a convenient, argument for those who are in the top echelons of power.
Okay.
But also, don't take away the fact
that it could be
homosexuality
a factor.
Is a potential factor.
Good.
It is homosexuality which is making my brother Honorable Samba keep on asking for pardon in studio.
Okay.
That mention again. He knows what is happening on that side of things.
Honorable Samba, we only have 5 minutes.
You know,
you utilize only 2 minutes as your parting shot.
Cheyune, who dubbed the NOP as
homos.
That you're not clear and you have not been.
I know that has been now a big excuse. Now for us, every time you come to speak about corruption, they will say, you shut up. You support homosexuality. Now it has been used as a big excuse. Even the president used it. Like I told you, the speakers, when the young people questioned on the exhibition the other time, she said that it is the corrupt that the homos that are targeting us. So for how long is homosexuality going to be used as an excuse? Why are we using it as an excuse without solving the problem? Now my brother Cheyune, I think just wanted to have a swipe at NOP. NOP celebrated like any other Ugandan when...
I see your president actually calling for more sanctions
anybody who is
on
has
many
pain.
more officials in government.
Anybody who has pain will be happy
And he
to
was
see.
chest thumping that he's the one actually who pleaded for these sanctions.
Yeah, maybe, because it's one way of weakening a dictator.
Oh.
It's one of the ways to weaken
You're
the
parting
dictatorial
short,
regime. So
winding up on this matter.
I really want to say that this country needs leaders who can own up to mistakes.
Yeah, sure.
When a mistake comes, instead of defending ourselves all the time, we become better leaders when we own up. And once we own up, then it means we are going to fix the problem.
Thank you.
When we defend ourselves, it implies we do not appreciate the mistakes that we have committed. Yet in leadership, there are higher chances of committing or doing
Why have
mistakes.
you refused the debate on corruption in Parliament to be tabled at you?
Because it is against the Speaker.
Simon Senyonga reporting short.
I think I agree with Honorable Samba here that number one, with those common words that we always use of our colleague Daudi Mpanga, he says that we need to have a central nervous system as a nation where you feel after one another. The excuse for the sanctions should never be again that there is a moral question that is rising. It should be that you feel after the people. This is our nation. Today, there was a time when Honorable Among was in the opposition. There's a time where Honorable Nandutu was nothing. She was a journalist, just like you. Talk about the World Press Freedom Day. There was a time where Honorable Chitutu was an ordinary servant, or Honorable Ngolo. All of them were raised to power. But one of the deceptions that we have, especially when we raise people to power, or people rise up to power, who do not feel after the people, is that they get caught up in the fanfare of power. If you remember some of the statements, the arrogant statements Honorable Nandutu made when Bobby Wine and the NUP team were loading food to Karamoja, the arrogant statements, all of this now come back biting. So for me, in conclusion, we should develop a central nervous system where we feel one after.
Feel for one another.
But most importantly, as a nation, we need to pick interest on how we operate and exist in international legal.
Thank you. 1 minute as you make your
Don't be
final
arrogant,
comment, Doctor.
Thank you so much. One, I want to comment on what you read as a comment from one of our viewers. I want to take it, one, that there hasn't been any arrogance exhibited on this show. And if he has gotten any, it is very unfortunate.
It is as if you've been coached by someone.
No, but certainly we come here with our heads.
That is true.
And we don't need any coaching from anybody. So please, we are sorry in case you got anything to do with any arrogance in as far as our debate is concerned.
Okay.
Sorry, Doctor,
yes.
maybe just to add on that, you are only responsible for what you say, not what they understood.
Absolutely. and maybe finally, it is. I want to encourage that we develop organic mechanisms as a country to do away with corruption. I also want to encourage that we start now thinking of getting other alternatives of developing our country rather than looking at aid. And we want to state that we need aid to go off the radar of Uganda development.
He says it is better to change government leaders because we are in a bad situation. The common person has been forgotten and corruption is being used as a weapon from some offices. Some tribes are segregated, not treated well. So even if you go to the anti-corruption unit, you will be defeated. Okay, by bribe. Okay, the message is somehow fragmented, but we thank you so much, viewers. We are closing the show here. He said, good morning, this is sad that we protect the corrupt officials in this country. Ugandans are dying in poverty, diseases because of money stolen. Look at the special cars and, okay, again, Collins, it is your name. Look at the travels abroad. Let's do lifestyle audit on these guys. Broad day robbery. Time will tell. It's really tough. Thank you so much, Collins. I am Musubuga Mohammed from Chitintali. Mr. Apple, thanks for the show. But those sanctions are not helping the people of Uganda. I remember some time back, there are also other officials who were sanctioned, but did they die? The only thing in Uganda which is needed is Ugandans to start feeling bad about others. Hey, If you cannot afford to eat breakfast and supper, then think about someone who can't afford it. Uganda is not a poor country, but we have made people poor by our own. We've made poor by our own Ugandans. Okay, the message is quite huge there. I'm winding up in just 1 minute. I am Wamono Isaiah. The problem with Uganda is not President Museveni, but the other leaders he leads with, especially Parliament. Uganda is much capable of doing anything as long as we take a hard decision by rejecting European stringent support, and we accept suffering for a while, but then with time we will rise again. Thank you so much, viewers. Our time is up. I must thank the panel, Dr. Daniel Rugalama. Thank you so much for your time and very wise deliberations. Thank you so much, Council Simon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Patrick, for according us this time.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for being a great audience there. Thank you so much for the comments and observations. Thank you so much to the production team. We'll catch up again next Saturday in another edition of The Dialogue. From me, Prince Apollo, good afternoon and a great week ahead. Good afternoon. God bless you and God bless Uganda.